Lyrically, I would say this is the most dense song I've ever written. So if ever, I think this is the song that needs this type of video. Cue the exit.
What would the world be without the writers and lovers? The writers and lovers.
Ultimately, the song Writers and Lovers is about what I think are the two main drivers behind human civilization, human society. And those are the writers and the lovers, or in other words, the thinkers and the doers. So your writers are the thinkers, the lovers are the doers. You need the doers, the lovers, to be bold, to explore, to be adventurous, to push the boundaries of what's possible in order to drive human innovation and society forward. But you also need the writers, the thinkers, to put all of this down, to document this progress, to document the actions that humanity has taken in order to preserve it for future generations, civilizations, to then draw upon that knowledge. So that's why I think these are the two deeply intertwined types of people that are ultimately the pillars of humanity. And that's what this song is about. Let's start with the first verse.
Columns underneath the Pantheon dome, Ovid with a pen in the heart of Rome. Julius in purple with the laurel on. Every quest he lives is legend by dawn.
Columns underneath the Pantheon dome. So if you've ever been in Rome, this is an incredible ancient Roman building in the center of Rome called the Pantheon, and it has these massive columns at the front. And it's absolutely an engineering architectural marvel, but it's also so awe-inspiring because it has survived 2,000 years. And so you have these massive columns at the front, and it is, and then there's like a hall in the center. And the reason why it's such a spectacular building is because it was actually the first unsupported dome that humanity had ever created. So that just speaks to human ingenuity, progress, and also skill for such a long time back in history. And so columns underneath the Pantheon dome, Ovid with a pen in the heart of Rome. Ovid was a very prolific ancient Roman writer, and one of his most famous works was Ars Amatoria, which means the art of love. And the peculiar thing about this piece, this work, is that it talks about love not as something psychological and emotional, but more strategic, like the processes you need to go through, things that need to be thought out in order to pursue your significant other, if you will, in ancient Rome, in that society. And so I wanted to allude to Ars Amatoria by saying Ovid with a pen. So immediately we know that he is the writer character of the song, in the heart of Rome. So you can mean center of Rome, but also heart as an allusion to Ars Amatoria. Julius in purple with the laurel on alludes to Julius Caesar, very, very famous Roman Caesar. I don't think I need to explain that. But Julius in purple. Purple is in ancient Rome when generals or emperors would conquest something very important, something significant. A triumph would be thrown in their honor, which is basically like an ancient version of a parade around Rome. And whenever a parade or a triumph was thrown in your honor, in this case Julius, the triumphator would wear purple, which was the color of nobility even back then. So Julius in purple, he just conquered something. With the laurel on, so the golden laurel crown, again, is to signify victory. Every quest he lives is legend by dawn. And that, again, that's the first time that you tie in the relationship between the writers and the lovers. So Julius, the lover, conquers something. It's a conquest. But then the writers, the people who take this down and document it, turn this immediately into legend. So the two cannot coexist without one another. You cannot just be doing things without anyone documenting that it actually happened. First pre-chorus. This is going to be a lengthy one. I'm sorry. I'm trying to rush through it, but there's a lot of references in this one. Pre-chorus.
Spill the wine, spill the secrets, catch the Colosseum glances, ink on pages by the fire of bacchanalian dances, got the
spill the secrets. I was trying to be sly and kind of refer to a very famous ancient Roman Latin saying, in vino veritas, which means there's truth in wine, if you will. So when you're a little bit inebriated, tongues get a little bit loose and secrets get spilled. So spill the wine, spill the secrets, catch the Colosseum glances. Of course, the Colosseum, the arena in ancient Rome that still is there today, was a center of both societal and political life. And your position in the Colosseum, where you would sit, would be very much directly tied to your position in society, in ancient Roman society, and your economic, political standing. And so saying catch the Colosseum glances is all about these dynamics of power play, both with Ars Amatoria, where love was seen as a strategic move, but also as a way of showing that that's really where a lot of ancient Roman life was happening, and you could like catch glances and see who was where. Ink on pages by the fire of Bacchanalian dances. So the Bacchanalia were these known to be very rousy, wild dances. In ancient Rome, they would be thrown in honor of god Bacchus, who was a god of ecstasy and pleasure. These parties would often get very steamy. And so again, this kind of depicts a image, a situation that again ties together the writers and the lovers. So your lovers, the doers, are the ones taking part of the Bacchanalia, of the dances. And then it says ink on pages by the fire. So alludes to a writer or someone perhaps more introverted, standing to the side, observing what's happening and writing it down and documenting. So again, the doers and the thinkers. Cut the deal, cut the road, take the gate, keep the throne. Really talking about the lovers in this case, Julius or any really old Roman emperor of that era, of putting down history or creating history by making bold geopolitical moves. Cut the deal, cut the road, take the throne, move the pieces, as in chess pieces. I think geopolitics are often referred to as a game of chess, and I want to refer to that here. Move the pieces, name the days, etch the future into stone. So etch the future into stone refers to literally the Romans etching in writing and messages in their architecture, marble and stone. Name the days is a specific reference to Julius Caesar, because, fun fact, posthumously, the name of the month of July was named in Julius's honor. So that's something that even 2,000 years later, his legacy in a way persists. And that's again the combination, the co-workings of the writers and the lovers. Chorus.
Some people just know what to say, philosophizing on a page at a cafe. Some people just know what to do, perpetual running, always chasing the view. Live it up, write it down. Don't blame the players, blame the builders of the first town. And we all end up quoting our mothers. What would the world be without the writers and lovers? The writers and lovers.
If the verses are hyper-specific in historical references, I wanted the chorus to act as like an overarching thesis of the song. And I think I've spoken about this a lot in these lyric explanation videos, where I want to make sure that at least one part of the song serves as like a quick 30-second elevator pitch or a thesis for the song. And that really depends on where you decide to put it in the song, right? Most of the time it's in the chorus, and it's same here. My verses and pre-choruses are very wordy, a lot of references, and here I'm trying to lay it out a little bit more plainly and generally. So some people just know what to say, philosophizing on a page at a cafe. I think pretty straightforward, you know, like someone sitting in the back at a table, just kind of documenting and observing what's happening. So the thinkers in this case, some people just know what to do. Perpetual running, always chasing the view. So some people, instead of, you know, observing, they prefer to act and to explore the world and be adventurous and bold. The doers were the lovers. Live it up, the lovers, or write it down, the writers. And I like this because it kind of works with the melody, because on live it up, the melody goes up, and then write it down, the melody goes down, which I thought was like a cool little combination of interplay between the lyrical and the melodical components. Don't blame the players, blame the builders of the first town. And I think this one is the most kind of philosophically dense line of the chorus. It's a play on the expression, don't blame the player, blame the game. This case saying, don't blame the players or the current generation of people inhabiting the world, the current iteration of human society. So don't blame us, blame the builders of the first town, blame many, many generations, thousands and thousands of years ago, who have kind of arranged society in certain rules that we still abide by. And perhaps, and this kind of gets tackled later on in the song, but perhaps this is something that is just innate to human nature, that inevitably we kind of defer back to these patterns and organizations. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I think this song at least tries to touch on that a little bit. It'll come later in the chorus too. Don't blame the players, blame the builders of the first town. And we all end up quoting our mothers. Again, this idea that regardless of how much you try to deviate from certain expectations, not on like an individual level, but very much on a species level as a human, we all end up in some way inheriting the habits, the ideas, the ideals of the generations that had come before us. So we all end up quoting our mothers. What would the world be without the writers and lovers? And this kind of gets to the core of it, this idea that those are the two engines behind human civilization. Is you need people who do things, who are bold, who explore, who are fearless, but you also need people who will observe all of this from the sidelines and document it and write about it to preserve it for future generations. Verse 2.
By the foreign ruins under July skies, heat of the moment into lovers' eyes, marble under sneakers, empires under dust, a pen in a diary, keeping what it was.
If the first verse takes place 2,000 years ago in the era of Julius Caesar, the second verse kind of time travels 2,000 years later. And you were placed back in Rome. And I think Rome is a good, like a kind of like a perfect city to set a song like this in. Because if you've ever been to Rome, and this was very much also inspired by our family trip there through Italy last summer, is a city that is like incredibly historically layered, but also laid out for you to be very obvious. What I mean by that is you have let's say something like the Colosseum or the Pantheon exist in the center of the city, but you see all of the different epochs that came between then and now. You see sort of paraphernalia of the Catholic Church that came in the early Middle Ages and kind of took on all of this ancient Roman architecture and put their own emblems or signs of Christianity on top of it. And again, like its history is literally being written on top of each other. And then all of this exists in a plaza with people taking photos on their iPhones, you know, and like sitting in cafes. And you have this era of modernity completely, but also in a way almost like seamlessly interacting with antiquity and then the modern era. And it's really, really like a very unique place in the world to be able to witness something like this. And what's fascinating about Rome in general is it's everywhere. It's not one square or one market that would signify this. It's really the entire city. You can see quite literally layers of history being built on top of each other. Like you see certain streets that are still rounded out because there was like a smaller Colosseum or like an arena there. You know, it's like everything is working together and is kind of embracing this idea of preserving your past and building on top of it. So all of this to say, that's why I decided to set the song in Rome. And in the second verse, you say, by the forum ruins under July skies. So if you've ever been to Rome, you will know that there's this Forum Romanum, this massive area in Rome where they're basically preserving like the Roman Forum. So there's all of these archaeological findings and massive structures that are still survive from that era, or they were later assembled by archaeologists. And it really kind of like fascinating how well a large area is being covered by this reconstructed architecture of ancient Rome. And so you really get to see how the city really was planned out. Fascinating. And so by the Forum ruins under July skies, July is kind of like a wink back to Julius Caesar, saying, look, here we are 2,000 years later. The Forum is now in ruins. The Forum that was so alive and that was the peak of human ingenuity and ability and creativity at the time of Julius Caesar is now in ruins. But the month of July is still named after Julius. So history lived way past his lifespan. Heat of the moment in two lovers' eyes. So now you have two people, two young lovers kissing each other next to the Roman ruins. But then marble under sneakers, empires under dust. So they're there like smooching, but really under their feet, the sneakers, this very, modern footwear, are stood on ruins of people and generations that have come before them. Marble under sneakers, empires under dust. So all of these emperors and prolific people of their day are now in dust, and modern day youth is stood on top of it. And then a pen in a diary, keeping what it was, sort of like a modern version of an Ovid, if you will, is someone perhaps sitting by, observing what's happening and writing some stuff down in their diary. So a diary, again, being a representation of preserving a moment in writing. Great course.
Same book, different pages, iterating through the ages, different tools, different fools, but nothing ever truly changes. Same roles, different actors with spectators in the rafters. A tale as old as time, and now it's also mine.
Here I wanted to branch out a little bit and have this pre-course be perhaps more analytical and observational. It's also a bit of a nod to the whole bookstore project, because this still is a part of it. And saying same book, different pages is kind of this idea that there are certain rules, behaviors, norms that humans seem to inevitably defer back to throughout human history. And this is basically what this recourse says, is it's human society, human history is the same book. It's just different pages, different versions of the same thing, iterating through the ages. So every page is a new era, a new epoch, but really there's these fundamental similarities between all of them. Different tools, so new technologies, different fools, new people to take advantage of, to manipulate, but nothing ever truly changes. So you may be adding new technological advancements. The empire might have a different name. It might take on a different area of the map, or the clothing might be different. But again, the fundamentals curiously seem to always stay the same. But I think ever truly changes. Same roles, different actors. Again, same kind of structures that are created through human history, like the leaders, the plebeians, the people, the working class, it's the same roles, but just occupied by different people as generations passed, with spectators on the rafters. And I think this kind of creates the idea that in a lot of ways, human society is very theatrical, and we're all just, in a way, perhaps inevitably or unknowingly so often, playing roles that have been played long before us. We're just participants in this new iteration of that. And thereafter, a tale as old as time. So it has been repeated multiple, countless times throughout human history. And now it's also mine. I am currently alive in this iteration of human society. And now this story of humanity, human society also applies to me. I'm also a part of it, a participant, a player. Bridge.
Say it's love, it's power, it's nature, it's art. You do it for the story, or you do it for the start. Say it's love, it's power, it's nature, it's art. You do it for the story, or you do it for the start.
was trying to make some sort of like a catchy, straightforward hook for the song that would encapsulate the general idea of it. So say it's love. People like do it for love in terms of like literally the lovers, like doing things and acting on things for love. Say it's love, say it's power, or you're doing it for power to conquer new cities, to expand your geopolitical reach. Say it's nature. You can say it's just human nature that we're sort of almost like predisposed to these actions. Or say that it's art, or you do it for the purpose of creation, for documentation, observation. You do it for the story, in this case, the writers, or you do it for the story, the lovers. So you either do it for the purpose of, again, documentation of preservation, or you do it to create the story that is then up to someone else to preserve and keep for future generations. That was a lot. But like I said, lyrically, I'm really excited about this song because I think it says a lot, and it's perhaps a rather unusual topic to have in a pop song, which made it more exciting to try and write in a way that feels both catchy, but also when you start listening to the lyrics, or you try to kind of dig deeper into them, what they mean, there are hidden messages, and there's a purpose to every line, which hopefully you can see as well. And maybe this video helped you to realize some of the references or ideas that are thrown in there that maybe you didn't hear on the first lesson. So let me know if you have any questions. And thank you for persevering through this very long video. All right, I'll see you in the next one.